Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of Get to Know the Candidate. I am very excited today to be joined by Bryant Odega, who is running for Council District 15. He's going to come and tell us so much more about who he is and about his district, why he's running, and his vision for Los Angeles. My name is Aura Vasquez, and I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for every week to tune in. I have been hosting different candidates for office so that we can learn who they are and also, what they have to offer. For me, it's very important that our community also have access to people that are involved and that also are want to run our city so that we can get to know them better and also we can influence the political process. I firmly believe that it's all of our job to make sure that our city is running the way that we want to, and that also that power is really democratic and that we have access to people that have influence and power. So with no further ado, I want to bring Brian into the stream, and I want to welcome everyone. We are here streaming on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Twitch, and a lot more. So, hi, Brian, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for
Okay,
having me.
I'm gonna start lowering the volume on my computer and on my phone so that we don't hear the echo. And yeah, how are you?
I'm doing great. And yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I know that you were just running around canvassing, and as we let people trickle in, I want to make sure that people know that they can ask questions to the candidate, to you that are running for office at any time via the chat, and that people can also share their commentary and whatever they their thoughts about our conversation. So, Brian, first, I want to just ask you, and I feel like I have a little bit of a, okay, no, I see you in my Facebook camera in front, and I see you on the other. So let's see if we can make them all work together.
Okay. Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
I
How's
think
that?
so. All right, cool. So first, I don't know much about your upbringing or who you are, or I also know that you are an immigrant. I'm an Afro Latina from Colombia, from Cali, Colombia. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about who you are?
Right, of course.
Tell us
So
about you.
first, yeah, thank you so much, Ada, for inviting me to this live stream. It's a pleasure to be in this virtual space with you and with all the folks who are listening in. Yeah, so I'm born and raised in the Harbor Gateway in Los Angeles, which is the Strip in District 15 near San Pedro, Harbor City, Wilmington, that area. And I'm the proud son of Nigerian immigrants. My mom is a home health nurse, and my dad was a taxi cab driver. But when I was between the ages of 7 to 8 years old, my father actually got taken by ICE and was forced to
Mm,
leave the country. And so for most of my life, I grew up in a single parent household led by my mom. But growing up, both from my parents, I learned the importance of, family, of hard work, of being compassionate towards others. And it was those examples, especially led by my mom, that helped me become the first member of my family to graduate from college at UCLA. And it's what inspires my work, even during this campaign as an educator, working at high schools, teaching our youth about history and government. So that's just a bit about my personal background, and and now I'm running for Los Angeles City Council, District 15, because we need a candidate who knows what it's like to struggle to get by. As a lifelong renter, that lens of being a renter, being working class, of coming from an immigrant background, isn't really represented on the city council, and so that's why I'm running to turn those lived experiences into bold, progressive policies.
yeah, I'm interested also because you and I have worked with Sunrise Movement.
Hmm.
I'm an environmental justice advocate since I was a child. So maybe you can also tell us a little bit about your time with Sunrise and what inspired you to also become a climate justice or an environmental justice. activist and organizer.
Yes, of course. So yes, thank you, and also thank you for the work you've been doing around the environment. And so we stand on your shoulders. And yeah,
I
because it
know
was
this
only a
that
few.
this conversation is making me feel a little old.
Oh, please.
No, go ahead, go ahead. Share more about Sunrise. I love them so much. They're just so deep in my heart. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I love Sunrise as well. And yeah, my activism and my involvement in politics started with the Sunrise movement. A couple years ago, I volunteered and attended the Green New Deal town hall that they held here in Los Angeles in 2019, and that was my first time, realizing that, um, that um, there was this video of this guy in Chicago, and he was talking about like the oil refineries near his home and how that has contributed to his asthma and his health issues. And when I was watching this, I was like looking at my backyard, and I see like two warehouses over here, a factory over there, and for the first time, I realized that this is actually not normal to live next to industrial sites, and that this too is also an environmental issue, just like it is, for trees and protecting endangered species. Neighborhood oil drilling, industrial pollution is also environmental justice issue. And it was this frustration that motivated me to get involved in the Sunrise Movement, because I also realized that these were also decisions. These were the consequences of policy decisions that were made that said that these communities um, uh, can be subjected to this heavy pollution,
Uh-huh.
and others, not. And so I joined the Sunrise Movement, turned my climate anxiety, climate anger into climate action. And, I've canvassed for, candidates endorsed by someone like Lorraine Lundquist for City Council in 2019. I've attended my first strike, which was the 2019 Global Climate Strike, and continuing, doing the work of organizing and recruiting college students like myself to get involved. And yeah, and that also informs the work I do now as um, as a candidate, because we don't have elected officials who even don't really talk about the environment or about climate justice. And
Yeah.
just to use my own council member as an example, because my district, District 15, which includes Watts, Harbor Gateway, Harbor City, Wilmington, and San Pedro, is home to the third largest urban oil field in the country. Third
Incredible.
largest urban oil field. And our council member was on the air board, for several years, and he was, the biggest opponent to any type of air standards, health and safety setback between communities and oil wells. And so, um, so I feel like it's so important to have, a climate justice activist, representing District 15, because of, I think, if of all districts, if not this district, you need to have a strong advocate for environmental justice.
100%. I'm so glad that you're grounding our conversation on that. And I'm also so grateful that an African American actually you're black, but you're also from African descent, like straight
Yes.
up. So you're like double. You're black, but you're also from African descent. Is really leading the charts in an area where there's so much attention that we need to shine the light so strongly for attention on environmental issues in this area. So I commend you, because I also ran for city council
Right.
in 2020, and I know how crazy it is. So
Yes.
I thank you so much for just taking the courage to do something like this. It requires so much love for others
Right.
and so much courage, really seriously. So
Absolutely.
thank you. But I see the questions trickling down, and I want to invite folks on Twitter and on Facebook, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can post your questions on the comments, and we can bring them in and ask Bryant about his opinions on your questions. But I want to ask a following question. So a lot of the things that you experience in your life are the very reasons why you decide to run for office, or they really shape your
Right.
agenda and your priorities. So, and later we're going to
Absolutely.
talk more about your priorities. And I see the
Okay.
questions about the priorities in here. So hold tight, people, hold tight, because we will ask about those questions. But but I want to ask you, why? What's your why? Why are you? Why are you running? Why did you want to be a city council member in District 15?
Right, yes. I'm running because, District 15 has, as I mentioned, the third largest urban oil field in the country. And so what it looks like is, having over 2,000 oil and gas wells. Our
Yeah.
district is home to the Port of Los Angeles, which is the largest port in the country, and a huge economic engine for the city of LA, but it's also, a heavy polluter. And those
Mm,
who live closest to the poor actually have higher rates of miscarriages, of cancer and asthma. We have communities like in Watts where the water is contaminated due to the lead in the plumbing, and that the soil is contaminated due to the underground ExxonMobil pipelines. Our district is heavily industrialized, heavily polluted, and at the same time, we also have not only high rates of health disparities, but also at least 25% of our residents are experiencing poverty. Um,
yeah.
we are a 60% renter district, and 73% of renters pay over a third of their income on rent. And so we
Mhm.
have a lot of folks who've been struggling for a very long time, and we've had the same representation for 10 years. And during that time, rent has gone up by 65%. The climate crisis, the environmental crisis has only gotten worse as air pollution gets worse. And this is also a district that has 80%, Black, Brown, Asian, Indigenous, and yet we've never had a person of color represent this district before. And so the issues of
Ah,
the health and social disparities, and also the lack of representation, and the lens that we bring with our experiences being missing on city council from our district was ultimately what motivated me to run. Because we can't wait 4 more years to address climate change. We can't wait 4 more years and hope that for someone else to save us. We have to get in the arena, ourselves, even if we are working class, like myself. That is
yeah.
so necessary for people like us to be involved, to be in office, so we can use our lens and experiences to create the bold, transformative change that we need.
Yeah, and I love that you are bringing in intersectionality, which is so
Mhm.
important for us to talk about. And I
Right.
just, I participate. I'm very involved with many different other environmental organizations. And it, we, I feel like environmentalists get a little confused with,
Yeah.
especially with housing,
Right.
with like housing issues. I feel like we get a little confused sometimes that
Yes.
we do need more housing. We need housing to be affordable. We also
Right.
need housing to be sustainable, to
Right.
have, to be solar and EV infrastructure, to have,
Hmm.
um, we need to stop our reliance on gas. Gas
Yes.
stoves make us sick.
Yes.
If you don't know
Yes.
that, let me tell you, is it emits a lot of different gases, including methane, that are very
Mhm.
harmful to your health. And back to your comment about poverty, a lot of our families, a lot of our communities live in multi-generational in the same home because they can't
Mhm.
afford to live, on their own.
Right.
So we have grandkids, parents, grandparents, all living in very enclosed and small areas, breathing this air indoors, and this gas from gas stoves. So as we as
Yeah.
environmental climate folks that we are, as lovers of the earth, let's not forget that when we advocate for housing, we also need to make and housing that is affordable and that is also, you know suitable for the area,
Right.
that we also make sure that is fully ready for to support, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to fight climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's all
Yeah, so
intersection.
I want to ask you about your priorities, and I want to invite folks that are watching. Some people are making really amazing comments about poverty, and as a juxtapose next to the wealthy oil companies. And I want
Mhm.
to ask you about your priorities and what is the platform that you're bringing forward as a future city council member?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. Our vision is, it's the Green New Deal, passing a bold Green New Deal because, to me as a climate activist, the Green New Deal, yes, part of it is about clean energy, transitioning from a carbon-based economy to a one that's carbon-free, but it's also about reimagining what a healthy, equitable, and livable society looks like. And so every policy that gets passed has to have some type of climate measures, some type of environmental components. And so when it comes to the homelessness crisis, which our city has become the epicenter of, even though we are the second, richest city in the country,
Mm-hmm.
we need to build permanent supportive housing because it's about poverty, extreme poverty. And I don't believe that your income should be the basis of whether you have a home or not. And so we need
Mm-hmm.
to create, whether it's using motels and hotels, and also building homes as more homes as well for permanent supportive housing to provide wraparound services for our unhoused neighbors. Because it's also important to note that our unhoused neighbors also feel the full brunt of environmental injustice as well, from the heavy pollution, from the toxins in the air, from um, you know uh, uh, irregular weather, extreme heat, etc. And um, so climate justice is also housing justice. So we need to make sure that everyone has safe and secure housing that they can live in. It's also about detoxifying the soil that are in a lot of our communities, especially in places like Watts, where the soil is contaminated due to underground, pipelines from ExxonMobil. So detoxifying the soil, because that also, affects the air that we breathe as well. Replacing the plumbing. So basically, Green New Deal for housing.
Yeah.
Replacing the plumbing. Retrofitting our homes to making them, green and electrified. So as you mentioned, removing away those stoves, transitioning to electric stoves, investing in. It's also about food justice. A lot of communities like Wilmington, like Watts, like Harbor Gateway are living in food deserts and food apartheid, meaning not only do we not have access to healthy, high quality food that's like within a few miles away, but we also don't have any ownership over our food source as well. And so we have to so our food needs are at the whims of any major corporation who is willing to even move into our communities. Because for a long time they aren't even willing because they assume that we won't be able to afford, to pay, to buy their produce. So I'm calling out Trader Joe's because there was an article that, because that was one of the reasonings. And so I support things like Mudtown Farms, which is in Watts, which is the largest Black-owned urban farm
I
in Los
love that
Angeles.
concept so much. It's so cool.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we need to be stewards of our land. And if we transition from fossil fuels, a lot of the acres that these oil and gas wells currently occupy, those lands can be returned back to vegetation, back to nature, and we can use that for urban farmland. We can use that for green space, for wind turbines, and depending on how close they are to a person's neighborhood, of course, and more. And then lastly, it's also about creating good paying jobs so that folks are able to live with dignity. So I support a living wage, not just a minimum wage, but a living wage that's actually up to that is pegged to the cost of living, so that folks aren't just getting by, but are actually thriving and are able to not only pay their bills, but actually be able to, you know, t- uh, do the type of things that wealthy folks are able to do, like go on vacation or go to a spa or treat themselves and their families, because all of these things, contribute to the quality of life. And so overall, that is our vision. It's a Green New Deal, transitioning our economy away from one that is carbon based, one away from one that is exploitive and extractive, and into one that is equitable, that is sustainable, that is livable and
Oh,
just for all.
got you. Brian, did I lose sound? Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me on Instagram? Yes?
Well, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I don't know. Something happened and I thought I lost my sound. Okay,
Uh-oh.
that's really good to hear. And I want to ask a question that somebody put here in the chat,
Okay.
Joey, who actually is pretty involved in city-wide stuff. But he's asking, if elected, how would you address the storm watersheds, such as the watershed around Dominguez channels? Seems there is a lot of pollution inside of our watersheds lately. Yeah, because of the
Mhm.
plastic pollution. But go ahead. I'll let you send the first crack of this answer.
Right. So I think that's a great question. You know, currently I work as a substitute teacher for LUSD, but beforehand, I was working at the Boys and Girls Club of Carson as a youth educator. And late last year, we were smelling this um, this putrid, toxic, smell in the air, and it was so bad that our kids couldn't, do programming outside. We had to do
Uh-huh.
everything inside the classroom, and even then, that wasn't enough. And kids, got sick. There were times I got sick, even when I wore two face masks and a shield. Especially for our folks, staff, and students who had asthma, it was even harder for them as well.
I can imagine.
And right, um, and so another issue with not only with the smell was the fact that it took the government a long time to even address it. At first they're telling us that, oh, it's harmless. It will, maybe the worst is small inconveniences in terms of feeling nauseous. Kids feeling like throwing up is more than inconvenience for them. It's hard to focus and do focus on their academics, but it's also, I think, it speaks to the lack of transparency from our government when it comes to our water, when it comes to the fossil fuel industry, because Carson, is also home to one of the biggest oil refineries in California, and there is a connection between that and also the water contamination and the putrid smell that folks have been smelling. Um, and then, third, um, I think, um, this crisis has also, so on one end, right, it's, we're getting sick, from this air. We are frustrated with the lack of transparency, lack of urgency to do something about it, because these are also communities that are working class and black and brown. And so the government wouldn't expect, us to fight back, especially at the same level or intensity as, maybe Wall Street communities, would. But we've also seen the community stand up, um, and speak out against, this injustice. And so when it comes to the watershed, we need to detoxify our water. We need to um, conduct investigations and hold, heavy polluters accountable. Because
Yep.
another thing, that's another part of it, our heavy polluters aren't being held accountable. They're getting away, all for the sake of corporate profits, and that's not okay. And so that's my position on that. Um, and if you want, you want to take a
Yeah.
stab at that
Well,
issue
so
as well.
I so here is the thing. I feel like a lot of the pollution in watersheds and in the ocean, in in anywhere that we have, and even I live in mid city, and we don't have like
Mhm.
an LA river per se, but we do have,
Right.
like, we don't have like running water in those channels, but we do have them. And
Right.
you'll be disheartened by the amount of pollution that you see, by the amount of trash that you see there. And unfortunately, a
Mhm.
lot of it is just trash from mask, plastic,
Right.
things that you see on the street. We have
Right.
a huge problem here, and we have been trying to address it. The city of Los Angeles, the voters passed Measure W, which is our stormwater capturing or bill, or no, that would be, we pass a measure. That's our
Right.
measure, and we are to invest in stormwater capturing practices, permeable, asphalt, which also contributes to heat island effect. And
Mhm.
trees are so important for that because they
Mhm.
provide shade, so the heat.
Right.
um, the other piece to this is that we need to stop our using plastic.
Yes.
We just need to. And I want everyone that is watching to know here that plastic is just another byproduct of the fossil fuel industry. They
Yes.
fabricated this. We were not born with plastics, you all. We were not. My grandmother didn't have plastics like that, like the way that everything you look around and everything is plastic.
Right.
So, and it's also disposable. So we
Right.
need to also fight a little bit of capitalism this way. I'm
Hmm.
inviting you all to get on the program, because what happens is that this consumers mentality is killing our planet, and therefore
Yes.
it's going to cost us money. So I want also to normalize for folks that are watching that when we talk about, protecting our environment, it's not just the pandas, guys, or the
Right.
whales or the dolphins, or whatever animal you find endearing. They're extremely important in the flowers and vegetation, but we're talking about our
Absolutely.
livelihood in our pockets.
Absolutely.
you know
Yes.
Absolutely. So we have created a system that is really not, it doesn't work in harmony with our like nature and and planet. So I also wanted to bring this notion that we need to be better at trash collection,
Hmm.
recycling, which it hasn't been, and ultimately our like lower completely. You that you're watching, whoever is out there watching right now, and you should let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. That'll be fun. Let me know in the comments. You should also be looking at how we can reduce our own personal use of plastic, how we can
Hmm.
reuse everything instead of maybe having bottles of water hanging around in there. You have
Right.
events. Like when I ran for office, I was like, no bottles of water, bring your reusables.
Right.
And we used to get like the huge gallons to try to just like use less. It's possible. It's possible. So I just wanted to put like, my little call to action out there. Okay, let me see. I think I have some questions here on the
But can I
chat.
just say real quick
Yeah,
on that
please go
topic?
for it.
Yes, so you're right. Plastics is another byproduct of the fossil fuel industry. And that's why for our platform, we call, so kind of modeled after the real estate developer ban.
Yeah,
We also are advocating to ban, to prohibit the fossil fuel industry and plastic manufacturers from contributing in city elections. Not
exactly.
only right, and not only the companies, but also subcontractors as well, because that's how they try to get around. A lot of these laws is through the subcontractors, because it's also the influence of money in politics. We need to democratize our elections, and do use all the levers of power that we have, our tools at our disposal, to to not only hold these industries accountable, to also prevent them from polluting our political process, because we also can't trust
Absolutely.
them to be responsible corporate citizens if they're willing to
Absolutely.
you know
Absolutely. And I want to
continue
talk about
business
the
as
money and
usual.
politics, but I'm going to circle
Okay.
back on that later.
Okay.
Later when I talk about how people can support your campaign. So somebody, so Remo 522, hello there. Thank you for asking your question. Um, this person, I don't know if it's a she or he or was their preferred pronoun. I'm curious about any super fun sites in Wimbledon. Are there any super fun sites? Let me bring the question in. There it is. There's the question. I'm curious about any super fun sites in Wimbledon. So Remo, I don't know if you can give us more background, because I'm myself don't know what you're referring to here.
Okay.
Myself, me, I'm reading the question and I'm like, what is she talking about?
I'm
So
sorry,
let
Mo.
us
Do you
know,
mind?
Remo. Let us know what you mean. But in the meantime, um, speaking about speaking about some of the stuff in your agenda, besides housing, and like, can we get a little more in the nuances about what are you planning to do in terms of open space and parks? That's a big one for
Right.
me. Oh, she's talking
Right.
yeah, she's talking. I hope you're a she. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I apologize ahead if I'm not using the right pronouns for you. But majorly contaminated areas. She's talking about. I'm curious about any super fun sites in Wilmington. What are the majority? Oh, there's so many. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are, yeah. So in neighborhoods like Wilmington, Watts, pretty much most of the district, because a part of it is also one is the fossil fuel industry, but you also have like the port, And although I live in Harbor Gateway, which is much closer to Carson and Torrance than San Pedro, it does seem as though the port industry is like creeping up the district. And so in many places throughout the district, you have people living right next to a warehouse or a factory or both. And then of course in Wilmington, you also have hundreds of oil and gas wells. And so um, in Texas, they have, a health and safety setback. I believe it's like 600 feet, where, um, uh, any oil and gas well that's within that measure, that went within that parameter, they have to be closed down because of the toxins spewing from these wells that would sicken those residents. In Wilmington, in actually in California, we don't even have that. 2,500. We don't even have a 2,500 feet buffer zone, but a state
Yeah.
like Texas does. And this is liberal California. This is progressive Los Angeles, and so and that's also something that's been fought for years by organizations like Communities for a Better Environment,
I was
who we're
just gonna
proud to
mention them. Yeah.
receive their endorsement from, and Stand Delay and Sierra Club and more. Um, and but the city count there has been some progress being made when it comes to phasing away from fossil fuels, with the city council moving to support that phase out. But we have to fast track that. And I think it's not only enough to divest from the fossil fuel industry, we also have to hold them accountable, because um, because it's not just about the pollution that they're causing, but it's also the damage and the health impacts they've made on our lives. The contaminations they've made in our
Yeah.
soil, in our water, because we are literally living in air pollution, breathing in air pollution, working air pollution, playing air pollution, and over time, that air pollution damages our lungs, and as a result, we do have some of the highest rates. Wilmington in particular is in the top 5% of most heavily polluted neighborhoods in California, according to EPA. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so, phasing out is not enough. We need to have, a just transition, because part of it is also the jobs, right? All the folks who are impacted by the industry also tend to work in that as well as a means of survival. So we need to create, good paying green jobs that pay a better wage than the fossil fuel industry jobs. But we also need to invest in restorative justice, in expanding access to healthcare, support universal, healthcare, and the city council, which doesn't have it right now. But our plan is also to open a health department in the city council so that we can, provide, healthcare to residents. Um, and we also support something that Communities for a Better Environment has been championing, which is like a community resiliency hub
Yes.
in each neighborhood, where residents have local access to services, care, support, and I think that is essential, especially as we phase out from an economy that is largely rooted in the fossil fuel industry. And then we also need to invest in a detox, in testing the soil and the water, so we can also detoxify it as well. Because in places like Watts, for example, the community, especially organizations like the Watts Labor Community Action Committee, also known as WLCAC, and the Better Watts Initiative, had to take it upon themselves to study the soil themselves because of the lack of action from our own governments. And so part of it is also supporting a lot of the organizations who've already been doing the work on the ground, but just don't have the funding or the support that they need. And so overall, that's our plan when it comes to addressing these Superfund sites, and also, you know, um, our policy actions that we also want to do to remedy
Rumi,
the damage
I
done.
think we have your question there. Thank you for asking. She is also making a lot of other comments, but I think you have addressed the majority of her comments on the chat. With your answer. And a lot of people see other folks running for office, and they have no idea what it's like to run for office. I think it's such a
Right.
unique uh, situation or like event in your life. Is hard to relate. It literally is
Yeah.
hard to relate for other people, and it's hard for you to relate to others, because like I don't know if this happens to you, but like when I ran for office, all I wanted was to like talk about my campaign and how many doors I
Right.
needed to knock and how much
Oh
money I
yes.
needed to raise, and and like and how the this person said this and that person said that. So
Right.
it's like I said, it's very unique. What is the most challenging part for you about being a candidate? And be candid with us, because I want people to also learn how hard this is and how much courage we all need to have when we decide to take this step.
Right. That's a great question. I'd say um so two at least two that I could think of right now of the most challenging aspects of running for office. One is definitely fundraising. I'm a grassroots candidate. Running on grassroots donations. We don't take any corporate money, and so we don't have um, the luxury, of my biggest opponent, who is a former lobbyist, to just call, one person and get, 800, a maxed out, contribution, every day, and so um, when you're competing with that, that means you have to spend more time, calling folks. There's a thing called call time where you're basically just sitting down, calling donors, asking for
Calling your
money,
list of friends, calling
calling,
your
right,
community. Yeah. And
calling your
if you don't
friends,
come from an
community,
affluent community, who do you call? That happened to
right,
me. Like
right,
when I was call time, I was like, okay, who do I call? This person is gonna give me $30. That person is gonna give me $50. I mean, little by little,
right,
you get far. But yeah,
right.
I didn't have the donor base, so I'm curious about how you deal with the call time.
Uh-oh. Right. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, awesome.
I think I lost
Yes.
you just for a second. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. But yes. So you know, it's so funny how you said it, because our average contribution, we've received over 600 individual contributions. So the most donations from regular people in this race that I'm running in District 15. Our average contribution is like $49. So what that means is, you know, um, we've, fortunate enough to get, a couple, progressive folks who are able to contribute, 500 there, 400 there. But a lot of it is, $27, $5 here, 15. Um, and, and so, um, so although that does make it difficult to, raise a lot of money in the time that we need, the good thing is, though, is that in the city of Los Angeles, we do have a public matching program in which the city matches donations from LA residents by 6 times. And so
Mhm.
if someone pitched in, $5, that turns into 35, because an additional 30,
Six times, no?
27 is even more. And so, um, and so that gives, grassroots candidates like myself, a huge advantage, as opposed to, my sister Fatima, who's running for state assembly, who I'm a huge, she's, my mentor. And so for
Incredible.
city, so incredible, another environmental justice champion. And
Brian,
so
I
I'm a
think
city
I lost you on
councilor.
Instagram, by the way. I don't know if anybody else can hear me. Are you if you're on Instagram, put a little heart, but I think your image is frozen.
Oh no.
On Instagram though, I don't, or is it me? I see myself on Instagram, but I don't know if you are on Instagram
Let
right
me know
now.
if you can see me, y'all. Can you
Okay,
see me,
people saying yes.
Malibu?
Hi, welcome. If you can see Brian on Instagram,
Hmm.
let us know. No, we can hear. Mm.
Okay, let me try something.
Okay, so maybe it's just the image is frozen. Oh, they can hear you, yeah, on Instagram. Okay, but my
Okay.
the image is frozen on my end.
Okay, is
Okay,
it
they
still
see you
frozen?
too. So forget it. It's just me. Who cares? Thank you guys for
Okay.
keeping us on track here with the tech.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
But I know that on Facebook and on YouTube, everywhere else is fine.
Okay.
Okay, they
Sorry
can
about
see and
that.
they can hear. That's all I cared
Okay.
about. If I
Okay.
cannot see or hear, it's fine too.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Okay, so
Um,
we were talking about the challenges about
right,
running for city council,
right.
and
The second challenge,
yeah.
yeah. So the second challenge of running as a working class candidate is that I'm still working as I'm running because if I
Yeah,
if I
that
don't work,
happens too.
your homeboy is going to be out on the streets, and that the campaign's over, and um, so that's a huge challenge because what that does is, already, our government has tipped the scale of power is tipped towards the wealthiest, individuals in our
Right.
society, and so when it comes to running for office, the same, is unless if you don't have wealthy connections or you aren't wealthy yourself, then that's why you also don't see as much representation from working class folks, from renters. The only renters on city council actually are those who are renting for residency purposes.
Or
They
they
own
own
homes,
their home,
somewhere
but they
else.
don't own it in the. Oh well. So okay, so this is a good point. This is an educational point, you all.
Right.
When you are run for city council in the city of Los Angeles, you have to reside where you're running from.
Hmm.
You have to be a resident, I think, for about a year at least. I think there's
Hmm.
there's a requirement. There are other
Right.
seats at the state level and in Congress. Congress is the most relaxed. You
Right.
literally can move, and then a week later you can run, and no big deal. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a lot different. So, but in LA we have requirements. So we have to live in the district. So just to keep an eye out because when folks run in a certain areas because they're supposed to be living there and that's supposed to be their community. Somebody
That's right,
asked me,
Eric.
and
Running does
somebody
not pay the
asking
bills.
here the matching funds. People are talking about you. Yeah, they also don't pay you to run for office. That's another piece to the puzzle. You have to, if
Right.
you if you're a grassroots candidate or if you don't have a big job or something like that, like you have to work and also
Right.
run for office. So just so you all know that this is not. I know some people have the idea sometimes also that you're like where does all the fundraising money goes? Let's talk about
Right.
that. Where
Let's
does
talk
the
about
money goes? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So, for a campaign like ours, we are largely rooted in our ground game. And so, our voter outreach, community outreach, so canvassing, door knocking, digital ads as well, and phone banks and text banks as well, all of which, cost money. The flyers, you have to pay to print them.
And you have
And
to
we
use a
do,
union
right.
printing, which is we're happy to pay the extra money because it goes to a
Yes.
good paying job, but it's extra money.
Yes. Yes, so that's even extra money. And so we get our printing from the big house, from SCLA, by Jorge Nuno.
Yes.
So shout out to him and to SCLA. Um, and then to text people, that also costs money. You have to pay for text blasts, you have to pay for digital ads, you have to pay for staff as well, because I can't do everything myself. Um,
Yeah, and you
and
want to
so
pay a fair
right,
wage
right,
also. We want to pay a fair wage. Um,
absolutely.
you also gotta buy food for your people. We
Yes.
all gotta eat. And when
Yeah,
volunteers
snacks,
come, when volunteers come
pizza.
to door knock, you gotta get them good food. And I
Yes.
usually I used to get them healthy food. Like I know the pizza game, but yeah. I mean,
Don't come
I,
for me.
I I come from like the green Latinos, so they're like, for my tacos, I want vegan food,
Right.
so yeah. But it's always nice to partner up with people in the community that are selling food, like your local
Oh
restaurants and
yes.
stuff. And
Oh
they
yes.
always love to support you and you support them. And
Support
that's
small
the
business.
beauty of doing, your investments. Let's talk about mailers.
Okay.
How
Let's
much
talk
does
about
it
it.
cost to send mail around? Tell us.
So we're still looking at that actually. Um, and um, the so some of the prices I've seen, 55 cents, a piece, and that's like the lowest end. Some, 60, like 63 a piece, and that may sound, cheap, on um on like maybe on individually, but when you're getting like like 20,000, they're sure you're paying 50 cents 20,000 times, and that adds up real quick. And so that's also
Yeah.
where
How
the
many
money goes.
people, when you ran for office, I want to paint a clear picture for folks that are watching. Um, how many people do you have to mail, and how much more or less is gonna cost? Because we're about to ask you for money, so get ready because you're getting the itemized receipt here, so that you know where your money is gonna go. So come on, Brian, sell it to us.
All right, so if we were, let's say, if we wanted to reach 15,000 voters in our district, and so we wanted to order at least one hit of mail, so 15,000 of mailers, and let's just say about, let's say it's like 60 cents a piece. If someone can do the math for me real quick, 60,000 times.
Well, I remember when I ran, maybe like 70% of my money went for to mail.
Yeah.
Simply because I was very committed to have a People's Power campaign. So only one consultant got paid. And I
Hmm.
also have my own things about consultants,
Yes, we can talk about that.
because like I have been teaching people how to organize, I have been training people, I have been mentoring people. I was like, all right, kids, this is the time to get down and dirty and to do the work. And
Right.
so we had tons of people on the ground just volunteering, and also like I got a lot of content creators that came around and supported me too. A lot of people were very excited about, can I make a video, can I make a song, can I, like, can I bring my coffee shop to your events and give coffee out. It was just so extremely sweet,
Right.
that to see that. But somebody,
That
Eric,
so
did the
good.
math. Thank you, Eric, for that. So it's about 15K every time you send a
Yeah.
mailer. And you're supposed to send at least 10. That was, I
Yeah.
remember the formula. So we're looking at $150,000, just easy, like zero.
Yeah.
So okay, here it is. If you guys want to see
But just real
different
quick, just
candidates,
to
yeah.
right, um, and so another way you can also make that up, if you know, our budget doesn't call for that, we can, all Canvas. That's where canvassing comes in. That's where our digital ads come in. All the various ways we can, um, touch people and reach people. And so yeah, so thank God for public matching funds, indeed, Eric. Um, but being able to send mail is so important as well. And so yeah, so if you can, pitch in, $5, $27, if you're LA residents, that, gets matched 6 times. And so, um, and so that'll be a huge boost for us, because for the primary, we're able um, to access upwards to $151,000. And so that's huge,
This is a good
especially for a
question
grassroots campaign.
somebody's asking. Excellent question, Bernard Henderson on Facebook. He's asking, when you win office, where does the unused funds, where do they go? Do the least fortunate get the money restored? Okay, so you can go ahead and answer. I have some answers, like in my days. I don't know if ethics have changed, or campaign law, but you have to spend all your money on the campaign.
Yeah.
You cannot take it home. You cannot buy a new car. You
Yeah.
cannot invest it in
Go on vacation.
on vacation or in a new bicycle.
Right.
You have to use it completely, because you have to show. It's actually very complicated, guys. You have to show like your receipts, where they come
Hmm.
from, like that money needs to match the books, and all of that
Hmm.
goes to a public portal where you can go and check where do the funds go. So this is not
Right.
some nebulous, formula here that we're making up. But do you have anything to add to that question?
Oh no, I was gonna say the same thing, and I guess maybe they'll probably refund it as well, because yeah, all of it definitely has to be spent, for the campaign, and because if
Yeah.
you still have a lot remaining, then that could be a sign that you maybe budgeting practices, weren't, proficient. Um, and so, yeah, so just echoing what Alda said.
Awesome. So yeah, so there's a website. I'm trying to remember if it's the clerk or I think it's ethics, LA City
Yes,
Ethics. You
ethics.
can find it
Hmm.
there, and you can find not just Brian's, but everybody's. How much money
Hmm.
they made, where, who donated, how much they donated. All of that is found publicly because that's how LA City works. Lobbyists are not allowed to make contributions. So that's another piece. And the max contribution is 800. I'm going to take two more questions that are coming from actually from Twitter. It is, wait, hold on. Let me see if I can. It's Skitter63. All right. I love all these names. He or she is asking, are you going to reduce government spending?
Reduce government spending. Um, So yes, especially when it comes to what we spend right now on policing, for the 2021, 2022 budget, like 46% of our general funds alone were spent on policing.
Mhm.
And so when we spend more on one thing, that's money that could have been spent on public works, which is what oversees our roads, our bridges, that oversees the climate emergency management office, which is supposed to be responsible for our climate policy and climate action. And
Mhm.
so when we spend 46% of our money on policing, you know, everything else is being underfunded. And so right now our city isn't managing its funds, properly. And so that's why I support reallocating all of those funds into, other programs and services.
Awesome. Okay, last, because I know your phone is dying, and some folks are asking, what did you do? Bernard Henderson, you can replay this video. We talked about that at the beginning. Brian is a teacher in LAUSD, just to completely recap, but he said a lot more stuff that you should definitely get to know about Brian. Okay, so lastly, how can people get in touch with you if they want to support you? And what's the best way to support you?
Yes. So to follow us and find out more about what we're doing, you can go to our website at odegaforla.com. That's ODEGAFORLA.com. You can also follow me on social media on all platforms at Bryant Odega LA. Um, and there you can also, sign up to volunteer, because that's really, the lifeblood of our campaign is our grassroots power, grassroots fundraising, grassroots organizing, because we are up against, a former cop lobbyist who is backed by, the most powerful and wealthiest forces in our city. But when I'm out there in the community, I just came back from a canvas today. When I'm talking to folks, people are ready for change. People are tired of typical politicians who only show up when they're running for election, but afterwards everything's held behind closed doors. There's no transparency. There's no engagement. And so the way we change that is by us, showing up and showing out to make change. And so if you can't show up to a canvas, you can phone bank. If you can't phone bank, you can text bank. If you can't text bank, you can donate $5. If you can't, even boosting us on
Donate
social
30
media
bucks,
also
people.
helps.
If you can go to Starbucks twice a week, you can donate $30. So, okay? Because we're trying to get good people elected to office. This is, I mean,
Yes.
you heard the numbers. We're looking at a $500,000, and we're running against people that have way more support, and that have way more access to donors that have money. And if you want people that are gonna be for the people, if you want elected officials that are going to be for us, we need to help them get elected. So please donate to the campaign. I put the link on the bio. The link is running around here, and also in the other platforms. So, Brian, thank you so much for being with us. Lastly, just leave us with, what do you love most about running for office? Like a good anecdote, something funny.
Okay.
Yeah, share with us something interesting about your running.
Yeah, one thing that I love about running for office is, out, out, canvassing. Actually being out in the community and talking to voters. One, I like being outdoors. I like being able to walk around, but also just talking to folks because, especially those who have different experiences than I do, because when you talk to people you come to realize that we have a lot more in common than we do apart. And um some of my favorite parts, which is also kind of sad, but I'm overall grateful, is that for a lot of people we are the first political anything to actually talk to them. And so it does says a lot in terms of disenfranchisement, but also says a lot about why it's so important, the work that we're doing, because it's not just about winning an election, which we are running to win, but it's also about making impact and letting people know that that their voice matters, and just the connections that we make, is overall what I love the most about running for office, and also what I love the most overall about being a community organizer.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Brian, so much for stopping by. Good luck. Elections are in June 7th, but
Yes.
mail ballots are dropping on Mother's Day. So don't
Yes.
forget, make your plan early and vote early. So thank you so
Take
much
a
for
moment to
joining us
vote.
today. I'm sorry, say it again.
No, I was just saying, celebrate Mother's Day by getting your mom, your grandparents, everybody, to vote.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Get everybody to vote on Mother's Day. Well,
Yes.
thank you so
Yes.
much. Thank you so much for being here with me and for sharing who you are with our community, for educating us about what's going on in the poor area of Los Angeles and in
Hmm.
your community, and for also allowing us to support you and to really show up for good people. We all want to see a different government. We all
Yeah.
want to see change. We are tired of the same. We're tired of the corruption in Los Angeles, and the only
Hmm.
way for us to change that is to also put different people in office. So thank you,
Absolutely.
and I hope to see you again very soon.
Thank you for all the work that you've done, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. And to all the listeners, thank you all for listening, and also for your great questions and comments.
Absolutely. All right, we'll talk very soon.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye. All right, guys. So that was Bryant Odega. He's running for Council District 15 here in Los Angeles. Do not forget that elections are in June 7th. But in California, we have the chance to vote as soon as Mother's Day in May, when you get your mail ballot in the mail. So please make a plan, talk to a friend, talk to your family, and make sure that you get involved. I see you all next week. I'm going to have some very interesting people too. So I hope that you can tune in. And the conversation is always continuous on social media. So please join me there with your comments and your questions. Thank you so much. You have a good day. Bye.